When you speak about leadership, the good fortune that we as the youth had during apartheid, the one good fortune was that we were, for those who had a iota of care and concern within us, we were forced to join the struggle at various levels. So I remember I was, in 1985, I was in standard 7, grade 9. I was probably 14. And I was elected onto the Student Representative Council, the SRC of the school. And it happened so that year that was the struggle of 85. And so you were thrust into this responsibility. From there, I became the president of the Student Representative Council, became the deputy head boy of the school. So from a very early start in my life, I gave back. And from a very early start, I occupied leadership positions within the spheres.
And if you like the show, please give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, hit the bell icon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the Campus Dialogues, a Muslim Views production in affiliation with MuslimFin Family Office. MuslimFin Family Office, building trust, preserving wealth, empowering generations. I'm your host, Ali Sali, and this evening we have a fantastic and exciting new episode for you. And tonight we're going to be talking to someone who we can call a leader in the community. 100%. Someone who has been making great changes in some of the things that he's been doing. And obviously here to introduce our guest is my good friend and colleague Siraj Buzik. Siraj?
Assalamu alaikum, Ali.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, how are you doing?
Alhamdulillah.
Like I always say, another week, another
podcast.
There
we go.
And today we're joined by Kashif Wicomb, a law graduate turned entrepreneur, Chief Executive at Adenco Electrical Construction, President of the Progressive Professional Forum, and a member of the President's Board-based Black Economic Empowerment Advisory Council. Kashif has been a leading voice for inclusive empowerment and policy transformation, and his journey is all about turning vision into impact. From scaling businesses to driving social and economic change, Kashif, welcome to the podcast.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's an honor to be here and thank you for hosting me.
Kashif, we're quite excited to jump into some of the topics we'll be discussing tonight. But before we dive into those big themes of ethical prosperity and connected communities, let's start with your story. Tell us about yourself, your journey from law into entrepreneurship and leadership. What shaped the Kashif Wicomb we know today?
Okay. It's an interesting story, Siraj and Ali. So my story doesn't start in Cape Town. Okay. My story starts in a small town called Uitenhage, Kariga, in the Eastern Cape, where I was born, matriculated there, left Uitenhage in 1988, which is 35 years ago, I've lost count, to come to Cape Town to study law, with the express undertaking to my dearly beloved mother, who's passed Mana Pujana, to come back. When I finished, I never did. And so this is where I ended up today.
Is that testament to the life of Cape Town? I mean, are
I tell the story often to youth, and maybe we should start there with the right offer at the wrong time. And how what was a disaster turned out to be in Allah's taqdeer. So in my final year of LLB at UWC, I failed company law. Okay. Devastating. At that time, I had my articles lined up at a big law firm in Uitenhage. I was going to do my articles, become the town mayor like most lawyers become, of the main road like most lawyers do. And so all that crashed. And so I had to repeat company law in 1996. Abbas Jaimu, we spoke about earlier, offered me a 6-month position at what they launched, Arcus Consulting Engineers, in mid-year, and took it up. And then that turned into permanency. And so to the youth out there and to anybody, had I passed company law the way I had intended for it to do, I would not be sitting here today. I would not have married my wife Ilham. I would not have had the children that I do. I mean, just ongoing.
Yeah, like and you mentioned, Allah's taqdeer.
It's an Allah's taqdeer. So to the youth out there with failure or perceived failure, and with perceived struggle, that shapes you into the diamond that you are going to become. because Allah wants that for you. So my journey starts in Uitenhage, ended up here. I am where I am, never went into practice because I write off at the wrong time. But I probably would be a very miserable lawyer because I love what I do. Yeah.
So would you say, failing company law at UW's at university, was that where you realized that perhaps law wasn't your final destination, or what other values guided you, through that transition?
So when you speak about leadership, the good fortune that we as the youth had during apartheid, the one good fortune was that we were, for those who had a iota of care and concern within us, we were forced to join the struggle at various levels. So I remember I was, in 1985, I was in standard 7, grade 9. I was probably 14. And I was elected onto the Student Representative Council, the SRC of the school. And it happened so that year that was the struggle of 85. And so you were thrust into this responsibility. From there, I became the president of the Student Representative Council, became the deputy head boy of the school. So from a very early start in my life, I gave back. And from a very early start, I occupied leadership positions within the spheres I'm in. My father, Ibrahim, was an activist all his life. He's 85 next week, inshallah. And so I grew up in a home of activism. And so that shaped me who I am. So the journey of community activism, leadership, and entrepreneurship merges. And if you allow it to merge, you become successful by whatever yardstick you use in all those aspects of your life, including fatherhood and being a dutiful husband.
Kashif, now, when Siraj so nicely introduced you earlier, you mentioned that you are the owner of a business, okay, but you are also the president of the Progressive Professionals Forum.
Correct.
Okay. Many of our audience are young professionals or professional entrepreneurs. Maybe tell us a bit about the organization and your role with the organization.
So the PPF was launched 10, 12 years ago, and we believe and still believe that the state public sector on its own cannot address the challenges which face our country. We believe that there must be a close working relationship between the public sector and the private sector in a very formal, informal way. So as an advocacy group representing professionals within South Africa, and we are non-racial in our pretext and in our founding statements, we guide the state where they can do better, and we assist the state where they're doing wrong. And so through advocacy work, we work closely with the state. Through advocacy work, we assist the state in crafting policies, and we assist the state in implementing policies. So many of our members are in very senior positions in both the public sector and the private sector. And it is something that we do as deep patriots of our country. We are all volunteers. We don't get paid. We don't do it for tenders. But we also believe that if you want South Africa to be successful, if you want to hand over a stable economy and a stable political environment and an independent judiciary to your children, then you need to be part of the solution and not just scream out what the problems are.
Now, Kashif, and like Alice mentioned, your work, with the Progressive Professionals Forum, I think has influenced so many conversations about transformation. And it's clear that, you're passionate about creating change. But I think every journey has a starting point. And like Alice mentioned, many of our listeners are young, professionals and entrepreneurs, and they're trying to align success with purpose. How do you personally define success, and what role do faith, community, or value play in that definition?
So of course, man-made success is measured by how wealthy you are in rands and cents. And that is for this life, in Arabic, the dunya. Success to me must be measured across various fronts. Obviously, as a professional, as an entrepreneur, as a husband, as a father, as a son, as a friend, as a brother, and also as important as how active you are within the community from which you come. We as an entrepreneur, as a SMME, as a professional, a would-be professional, it is your duty, in fact, I would say, to share those skills with those who have less than you with those who don't have the skills that you have. And so that is how one measures success. So you can't measure the success by how many German vehicles you have in your driveway. You must measure your success by how many lives have you touched and changed in the smallest of way on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis.
Kashif, has that always been your definition, or has that definition sort of evolved over time as you've grown in your career?
That's always been my definition. Unfortunately, the success I have as an entrepreneur and as a CEO of a Denko Construction is intertwined and interlinked to all of these things. And you don't do it because you want to be economically successful, but all those things eventually intertwine. And so if you measure your success only by how many German vehicles you have in your driveway, I can say to you, you are not going to reach the pinnacle of that financial success. And I need to go back to something that I told you earlier on, or when we had the conversation. There is no way that a business can be successful, any business, if 4 to 5 out of 10 people are unemployed within that community. Our unemployment is at 43%. So if you want to sell more bread, if you want to sell more baked beans, if you want to sell more whatever, water, you're not going to sell more water if 4 to 5 of the people that you interact with are unemployed. So it is therefore then in your economic interest to ensure that those who are unemployed become employed. It is in your economic interest to ensure that this country, no matter what you think of the ruling party and black people and white people, it is in your economic interest to ensure that this country is successful and is not suppressed by the West like they currently are.
You know, Kashif, when I hear you speak, you're talking about activism, and you mentioned that you guys are volunteering at the PPF, right? You as the president of the PPF and, you know, your colleagues that work with you are volunteering, and you look at South Africa and you say, you know, these are some of the things that are wrong with South Africa now, or where South Africa can improve. What are some of the issues or some of the main issues that you see? And to our audience, what are some of the things that our audience can do to help improve or maybe better the lives of South Africans in general?
Let me first of all say, you know, there's a Jewish proverb, don't ask the fish about the benefits of water. We live in our country, and I speak now, let me speak to the Muslim community, a minority, we are under 3% of the population. We can practice our faith, no matter which faith you are from, completely freely, without any sense of fear of oppression or victimization. I've just come back from a conference in Sicily where 200 or just under 200 of what they call the top 200 global influencers within the Muslim community met from the UK, the US. There were few of us, 5, 6 of us, South Africa, all over. And when you relay the South African story, and even before you do so, the high regard within which they hold South Africa, one, because of our transition to democracy, more recently our very principled position at the ICJ on Palestine, and then also how freely we practice our religion, our deen. They can't get enough of it. They want, like, how is it possible that the president of your country, every year without fail, he has iftar and puka with you? How is it possible that he remembers that there's something like Eid? How is it possible that when there is the presidential inauguration, somebody's making dua? How is it possible that you've got a Muslim personal law bill which is about to be adopted with its faults, but it's there? And so the point I'm making is that we have enough to celebrate, and we must celebrate that. And where it is broken or close to broken, which our country has and is, it is up to us to participate in that as volunteers. Because like I said earlier, you can't have 5 out of 10 people being unemployed and think that all is fine.
Kashif, that is so powerful, and it speaks to inclusive empowerment, you know, which is such a powerful concept. You know, what lessons have you learned about leadership that young South Africans, especially those trying to make an ethical impact in business, should hold on to?
So, you know, there's a prophetic saying by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he who is closest to Allah is the one who cares for humanity. Right? And so, who is humanity? Humanity is, if you are married, your husband or wife. Humanity is your children. Humanity is the domestic and the gardener who works at your home. Humanity are your friends, your brother and sister, your siblings, your father and your mother. But your humanity is also your employees at work, and humanity is also the people that you engage and interact with. So if you want to be closer to Allah, if you want Allah to appreciate you, if you want Allah to bestow His biggest and greatest blessings, rahmah, upon you, then you treat everybody like they are humans. And so what does that mean? We must be non-racial, non-sexist, non-sectarian, classless, etc., etc., etc. So when it comes to leadership, that's what we must do. And when we lead at a Denko construction, we mustn't provide anything to any of our employees that we would not be happy with as so-called senior executives. When we pay somebody a salary for working wherever they are working, you must ask yourself, is this a living wage? And the living wage is calculated. So leadership must not exploit. Leadership must not see color. Leadership must not see faith.
Kashif, I'm thinking of again coming back to the fact that you are president of the PPF, right? And also CEO of your company, right? Obviously, over the years, you've now, as head boy, learned to network. Okay, so we also try to encourage, from a perspective, they say that your network is equal to your net worth.
Sure.
Right. So in many cases, you've kind of gone through the ranks and gone through life, and you were introduced to very powerful people. So currently, right now, you are an advisor to the president, let's say, for example. What are some of the key lessons that you've learned in networking, in dealing with people, and in getting people to kind of do what you need to, or to achieve what you need to achieve?
Okay, so the first lesson is, don't network with those who look like you, eat like you, pray like you, and talk like you only. And so when I started into business, I remember I made a very specific and emphatic decision to join the Black Management Forum, the BMF at the time. I later became the chairperson of the BMF twice, of the Western Cape, and I served on the BMF board. That was in the early 2000s. And I joined the BMF because I was in business, and this is the thinking. If I joined another chamber, and I was really an SMME at the time, if I joined another small business chamber, I'll be speaking to everybody who talks, who's going to say, Mutual doesn't give us work. Transformation, empowerment. At the BMF, it was 95% made up of managers from big corporates. So if I wanted to engage with the procurement officer of Mutual, I wasn't going to see them at the local SME chamber. I was going to meet them at the BMF. So that was the thinking. And so that sort of thinking has guided me all my life. So when you want to network, go to a network that you probably have not, because that's the purpose of networking, to speak to people that you wouldn't speak to before. And probably even to go into uncomfortable situations that you're not used to. So you're going to be in a situation where the food may not be allowed, then you just don't have anything. You're going to be in a situation where you're going to have to be drinking water, forget what the other guys are drinking. But it is those networks that's going to work for you. Also understand that when you join these organizations as an ordinary member, you're going to have an ordinary network. It is up to you to put in the time, the energy, and the effort to one day, inshallah, God willing, emerge into a leadership position within that organization or network, because then it's going to work for you. And I always say again, if your niyyah, if your intentions are correct, and you're not networking for the sake of making money, you're not working within the organization for the sake of becoming a leader within the organization, but you're doing it for purest reasons, your intention, your niyyah is correct, then you're going to emerge into those networks. So the advice on networking would be, don't join Muslim-only organizations only. Don't join, in fact, let me put it more broadly, don't join faith-based organizations. You can become a member, but really go into networks which are almost foreign to you, so that you can empower yourself, but also equally important, so that you can influence those so-called foreign networks to be shaped by you, by your values, by your principles, by the way you think, where they will say, flip, gosh, if you guys are fasting, when you break your fast, okay, maybe we should start the meeting a bit later, but let's just break it so that Kashif can go and pray. For somebody who comes from rural Limpopo, to have that level of knowledge and that later that level of understanding and empathy, that's massive. And if I wasn't sitting there, that comrade from Limpopo would not have known that all of us are fasting in the month of Ramadan and that we are fasting right now, and then send you WhatsApp, Chief, I don't know what to say, but Merry Christmas for tomorrow. Brilliant. And that is because you go into those uncomfortable networks. And if, by the way, one day I am stuck in Limpopo for whatever reason, I can call the brother and say, listen, I'm stuck, my tire is flat, can you send out somebody?
Well, that is such an interesting story, Kashif, because if you look at how Islam has actually grown in South Africa, we have now almost been incorporated into every sphere of society, whether it be medicine, law, teaching. And the point I want to make is that it's almost a form of da'wah. When you get into these, meetings or groups or organizations, and it's not just like inviting people with the tongue, but that people see your Islam in the way you carry yourself. Having to drop off because you need to go to mosque for Jummah, not eating because it's not halal. And people are inquisitive by nature. They're going to ask yourself, so why aren't you eating? Are we offending you? And that's how they learn about Islam.
Sure.
And that, I think that's how Islam grew. But on the point of networking, I want to ask, has networking changed over the years, especially now with social media, globalization or is face-to-face networking still king?
Look, I'm old school, right? I'm 54, so don't ask me. So I still believe in face-to-face. I'm a strong believer in that. I'm a strong believer in people relationships. I'm a strong believer in looking in the eye and maybe giving you an uncomfortable message, but we're looking each other in the eye as opposed to an email. So I think younger professionals may believe that social networking replaces that. I think it enhances that, but it cannot replace it. 100%. So you've got to build solid working relationships with your network based on good times and the bad times. And in your network and with your colleagues and your partners in business, and I discover that every day, Adenko Construction is it was primarily made up of Afrikaner, they had a strong Afrikaner culture. And if you know the Afrikaner culture, they say it like it is. And people always say that, if you're an Afrikaner, you know where you stand. No, you actually know where you stand. For good and for bad. And I had to actually learn that, because where I come from, you sort of try and sugarcoat things, you try and land it softly. But the open misread the message completely, but in the Afrikaans, that's how it is. And so the one of the characteristics I've picked up is that you don't sugarcoat it. You say it like it is. You land it. The person who receives it may not be happy, but tomorrow, and I can guarantee you that, he'll thank you for the forthright honesty.
100%. So Kashif, I want to touch on the PPF. I think that has brought together people from different backgrounds, which is really in today's polarized world. How do you think South African professionals can use shared values like integrity, fairness, and community upliftment to strengthen trust, in the way we do business?
So, I think first of all, anybody who has faith, the Abrahamic faith, and any other faith, we all share the same values. Any person who has a good nature, or is a good character by nature, will share our values, right? If they have less of those values, I think back to your point, Siraj, then you can influence them not through scripture dawah, but through the way you conduct yourself. If you are fair with somebody every day, but at some point they're going to say, no, I was gonna screw you over, but flip, you're just too fair to me. So your shared values, your principles, will, and you must believe that, will influence those around you. And so when it comes to the network and the PPF and the leadership positions that we hold, it is through the way you conduct yourself that those shared values will emerge. And when they emerge, the next step is to entrench it. So that you don't have to watch over your shoulder what your partner stealing from you.
You know, Kashif, you have young children, right? They becoming professionals now. They going out into industry. They are entrepreneurs, also Muslim, and guided by faith, right? What is some of the advice that you give to your kids, and also maybe to the youngsters now that are leaving matric? You know, I think they are in the final stages of writing the exams. What type of advice are you giving to your children, and then also to the community, the youth, to say, okay, we look at someone like Kashif, Wicomb, and we aspire to be like that. A lawyer, an entrepreneur, a maverick. Someone is really making a change in the world, someone who volunteers their time and really, gives of themselves to make a change in South Africa. But what advice do you give to your children, firstly? And then also, what advice would you give to the youngsters now coming out of matric?
It will be the same advice. And it's a very good question. And especially for matriculants and for young professionals, and even for established professionals or senior professionals. You've got to matriculants and to those who at tertiary institutions, be it Technicon or the TVET colleges or universities, you've got to and you must participate in student structures. You have to. It is in those structures where you will learn for the first time how to speak in public. It is in those structures where you will learn how meetings are conducted, how to take minutes. It is in those structures where you will learn to lobby and advocate and do advocacy. Because if you want to change the color of your organization, you can't just walk in and say, I've got a great idea. You're going to learn and listen. You've got to run this thing for us 10 people. You've got to get 6 people to vote for your idea. The art of influence. Those things they don't learn you in a class. They don't teach you in a class. Nobody's going to teach you that except through how cold, hard experience which you're going to pick up in those organizations. So, advice number 1, become involved in student organizations. What it also does, again, to go to the self, because you're all thinking about what does this mean to my profession, I look at CVs every day. At the Denker, we've recruited significantly. We hire people like every week. And I look at the CV. If the guy hasn't played rugby, if he's not part of anything, I don't even look further. Because if you've participated in an organization, it shows you've got some sort of organizational skills. If you're the captain of the rugby team, the chess team, it shows that you've got leadership skills. And those are because, like I tell Hanan Kiani, no matter how good your marks are, you can get 75% for stats. But there's 10 guys who got 75% for stats. The guy that they're going to hire is the that plays for Kloof because the guy who's interviewing you played for Kloof. Or supports Hamlets or whatever, or your United supporter. That's going to hit it. And so your CV must look interesting. That's the second point. The third point is when you get into your profession and you're young, focus on your profession, but again, participate in the professional bodies around you, because that again is another level of networking. Because if you want to jump ship from wherever you are, where best to do so than in a professional body where a senior person who's a recruiter, who's a CEO sees this young man or this young woman actually is quite sharp. Let me headhunt or him.
Kashif, Jazakallah Khair. Thank you so much for sharing your insights on leadership, empowerment, and ethical entrepreneurship. Your perspective reminds us that prosperity and purpose, it goes hand in hand. And to our listeners, keep building with integrity, keep connecting with community, and keep striving for impact. Ale?
Yeah, and if you like the show, please give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, hit the bell icon, And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.